Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is, will NATO start a war with Russia June 12 to 23? I know you're never going to hear this on Fox News, and nobody wants to talk about this, but this is really serious. So back to the question. Will NATO start war with Russia June 12 to 23? So I'm going to do it backwards. A lot of times I will give you the prophecies, and then I'll give you the latest information. Today I'm going to start with the information, and then we're going to conclude with the prophecies as to why I say this. HalTurnerRadioShow.com. Intel. Institutional kitchens being warned have food stored for a 10-day disruption in the supply chain. They're being explicitly warned to make sure you have enough food to get through a 10-day supply chain outage. Is it 10 days or is it really going to be longer, and who's saying it and why? We've sort of heard this thing before, so why do we believe now? He says from vendors and now from the government. It's not a suggesting anymore, it is a mandate. They're being told, do this, make sure it's done. Okay, it's not a question anymore, it's an order. Hospitals, institutions, prison jails have populations that cannot simply go elsewhere and find food. So having the food would be an essential. And if someone knows there's definitely a major disruption to the supply chains coming, a mandatory. And that's what they're saying. It is mandatory that they have 10 days of food stored. Well, if the government is telling these big food institutions to have food stored, maybe we should too, and for that I'll send you to josephskitchen.com. Now, on its face, there's nothing on at the moment that might even give rise to a hint of supply chain disruption. Never mind specifically for 10 days, unless the NATO exercise in Europe from June 12 to 24 near the Ukraine conflict goes hot. Now, remember, they have a time machine. They have a looking glass. They can see into the future. They know what is coming. And in most cases, they're the cause of it. If it's trouble, they're the cause of it. These evil Moloch guys, okay? Goes hot, and there's some type of massive exchange with Russia. If the powers that be already know that there's going to be some type of wild weasel situation between NATO and Russia, and they do, then it would be certain interest to cover ourselves, to make certain our institution have food supplies in advance. Common sense tells us that these institutions wouldn't be getting this warning unless somebody knows something. So apparently they do. What else but a big exchange between NATO and Russia could affect the entire nation? Maybe they've looked into the looking glass. Maybe they've got a time machine. And maybe they've just said, we know this is coming. Now, we know that only God can change and affect this. And nothing happens without his approval. So maybe they're actually seeing it start in their time machine, their looking glass. But we know when it really starts. Let's go on. I'm also putting out a special request. Since I'm going to Honduras in October, I'm asking for folks to help me. We want to take my book, Miss the Mark, in Spanish down there. We want to give a bunch of them away. So we need someone to help us with Spanish. Now, I do not expect you to retype the 38,000 some odd words in the book. But what I would like for someone to do is to take this, and there are programs out there with a click of the button, you can translate it from English to Spanish. But that's just normal. This is prophecy. So I need someone that follows the Prophecy Club, that knows prophecy, then to go through and read it and make certain that the translator actually translated it correctly. Then we want to print a bunch of them, take them down to Honduras and give them away, as that's what I'm going to be speaking on. Don't take the mark of the beast. So if you can help, send us an email to the email you see on the screen. Send us an email, say, hey, I want to help. Again, I'm not asking you to retype it. I'm asking you to take it with a click of the mouse, translate most of it to Spanish, then read through it and make certain that it is all correct. Okay, here we go. World War III, potential kickoff dates June 12 to 24. Based on information which came to me discreetly via a postal mail, I've concluded that World War III can kick off in less than 2 weeks, between the dates of 12 and 24 June. The largest NATO air exercise, called Air Defender 23, takes place in that time period, and it may cover Ukraine, and it may be a counter-offensive. In postal mail that was large envelope and containing intelligence and NATO planning came to me. He said, I've checked it out. This is what I can confirm. NATO will commence its largest air exercise in history called Air Defender 23 on June 12. Air Defender 23 will be the most significant military exercise ever carried out in European skies. The event will involve the air forces of 25 nations. Are you listening? This is real important stuff, and I doubt Fox News and the other place are going to carry it. Air Defender 23 will represent the most extensive deployment exercise of air forces in the history of NATO. 10,000 participants, 220 aircraft, European airspace under the command of a German Air Force, or Luftwaffe. Air Defender 23 aims to enhance and optimize cooperation among NATO forces and show the alliance's strength. In other words, they're drawing a line in the sand. Russia's been drawing a lot of lines in the sand. Now NATO, with U.S. backing, is drawing lines into the sand. Now, we know Russia's going to attack and defeat America in 1 day and 1 hour, Revelation 18. But we don't know exactly what causes it. Could this be the cause? Well, it could. 25 participating nations, in case of military exercise or emergency, has 23 different aircraft types, including F-35, and for the first time ever, a Japanese Air Force transport aircraft. 100 alone will be arriving from 35 states in the U.S. Those U.S. aircraft constitute the largest deployment of Air National Guard aircraft since Operation Desert Storm in Iraq back in 1991. Guys, this is serious. This is serious. One does not move that many aircraft from that many countries halfway around the world, just outside of an ongoing conflict zone in Ukraine, just to have an exercise. It's a message, and it may be a threat, and Russia may be tired of being threatened when their threats are not listened to. NATO exercise covering for real attack. Another NATO exercise, Balt Ops 2022, was used as a cover to plant explosives on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines. You remember this. This was revealed by investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, who showed the Biden regime planned the Nord Stream bombing attack in the White House, deployed specialized Navy divers from a team outside the investigative purview of Congress to plant explosives that could be activated by special tones emitted from a sonar buoy 3 months or so after the Balt Ops 22 exercise, Hersh reported. A Norwegian Air Force plane was then sent to airdrop the special tone-emitting sonar buoy, which detonated the underwater explosives, destroying much of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So, NATO, using an exercise to cover for an actual military operation, is nothing new and still fresh in most people's minds. Now, fast forward to today. NATO is now planning its largest airstrike exercise in history. It is doing so just outside of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict zone. What a coincidence. NATO supports Ukraine and has been supplying Ukraine with massive amounts of money and military weapons and ammunition. But it hasn't defeated Russia. None of it has succeeded in turning the tide in Ukraine's favor. Russia is winning. Slowly but surely, in fact, Ukraine is losing badly. Their own troops have begun shooting officers in the head rather than going and engaging in battle and getting killed. That story with horrifying graphic video of the Ukrainian battalion commander shot in the head by his own is on his website. Now, the NATO countries have given almost all that they can give to Ukraine, and yet Ukraine is still losing. In other words, NATO has to take it to the next level unless they're allowed to let Ukraine lose. So NATO is coming to an inflection point. Either they admit they cannot defeat Russia, is what they're really saying, or they've got to come in the war on the side of Ukraine. So he's saying that this whole exercise is an exercise to get NATO involved in the Ukraine war, fighting Russia. Are you listening? Do you remember that Dmitry Duduman was told that the Russian bear would start growing angry? After he had grown very big and strong and powerful, he would start growing angry. And then he would grow even more bigger and stronger until finally NATO, in my opinion, is who he's talking about, would come after the bear, and the bear would just trample all underfoot, and it would be like men fighting off a big bear with just sticks. In other words, this could be it. This could put American forces, American bullets, fired at Russia. They come into the war to the side of Ukraine. That is what the postal mail material I received on Saturday seems to indicate. The only chance Ukraine has of turning the tide, and the only chance NATO has of saving fast after all its help to Ukraine failed, is for NATO to come into the conflict directly. I'm going to say that again. Their only hope is that NATO will come into the conflict directly. But there's a problem. Russia has not attacked NATO. Moreover, Ukraine is not a member of NATO. So in order for NATO to come into the conflict, there has to be some action or event that would justify NATO entering the fight, and that's what he's saying, that's probably what they're about to do June 12th. Creating an incident. For months, the world has been hearing about the coming Ukraine counteroffensive. Now, again, this is still HalTurnerRadioShow.com. He's been repeatedly stated that Ukraine is going to launch some blistering effort to repel Russia out of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporozhye, Blast states, which voted to secede from Ukraine and join Russia, and to regain control over Crimea, which seceded by vote in the year 2014. Of late, mass media in the West is also reporting that the U.S., through NATO, is working on giving fourth-generation F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine, and if that weren't bad enough, training Ukrainian pilots to operate those jets. Sadly for Ukraine, training a fighter jet or fighter pilot is not done so quickly. It takes upwards of a year. Even worse, by the way, I have to say, Russia has said that's a red line we're not going to let you cross. You send F-16s to Ukraine and we're going to target them. Don't be surprised if they don't start using battlefield nukes. Even worse, I reported the U.S. is not only pushing its NATO allies to detonate F-16s, but, let me try it again, to donate F-16s, but the U.S. is also insisting that planes be of the type with special modifications, enabling those planes to carry U.S. B-61 free-fall nuclear bombs, and Ukrainian pilots be trained in using them. Are you catching this? What we're saying is NATO is trying to enter into a war with Russia, and NATO is going to be bringing free-fall nuclear bombs into the conflict. Now, if you look through the lines, between the lines here, that's exactly what it's saying. This demand by the U.S. has been met with strong opposition from a number of NATO allies, and it should. However, the material sent to me via postal mail indicates NATO plans to create an incident wherein they can justify NATO entry into the war and using the coming Ukrainian counteroffensive as the means to do just that. He goes on to say that there are three scenarios, and we need to take just a minute and really think these through. The papers mailed to me indicate the following scenarios are in planning. Scenario A. Ukraine grants NATO permission to enter its airspace to establish a nationwide no-fly zone. NATO agrees and enters. 2. Russia has already warned it will engage and destroy such foreign aircraft. Russia then does what it says it would do, destroys NATO aircraft. NATO screams bloody murder. It has been attacked by Russia, and war is on. Scenario B. Ukrainian F-16s enter the fight, launch attacks into actual Russia. Belgorod is the likely attack zone. But since there are no qualified Ukrainian pilots, the planes will be piloted by British and, look at this, American pilots. What is that? That's American planes piloted by American pilots dropping nuclear weapons on Russia. What do you want? What else does it take to convince Americans Dmitry Duduman was told the truth? The fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with the internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and 2 of the countries will attack and defeat America in 1 day and 1 hour. So great riches will come to naught. America will be defeated in 1 hour using nuclear weapons. I've been carrying that message since 1987. I've never seen it get so close. I've never seen it get so close. B. Russia shoots down the planes, either in Ukraine or inside Russia. When the pilots are either captured alive or killed in the fight, their bodies prove they were British and American. And of course, Russia's going to put them on display on all of their media. Then Russia declares that they have been attacked by the United States and NATO. And then what do? They declare war on us. No, they don't declare war. They don't say anything. I don't even think that they will expose the British or American pilots. I think what they'll do is they'll take it. They'll turn the other cheek. But then they will plan in like 2 days to 2 weeks, launch a surprise nuclear attack. After the nuclear attack. And everybody says, what? What are you doing attacking America? They didn't do anything to you. They say, hey, this guy here, he's British. This guy here, he's American. They attacked us first. They're not going to give us any warning. Scenario C. This includes both the Scenario A and Scenario B above. NATO has granted permission to enter Ukrainian airspace to set up a no-fly zone, and NATO enters. Ukrainian F-16s enter Russia and attack. NATO planes warn incoming Russian defenders that they cannot attack the Ukrainian planes or they will be hit by some 200 NATO planes. Russia tells both Ukraine and NATO what's what and commences hitting all of them. That's still the same scenario. In other words, Russia will respond, in this scenario, Russia will respond because she was attacked. But she's not going to declare war. She's not going to do anything that alerts us. Instead, we don't know that we've been attacked until all of a sudden all of the electricity goes off, all of our cell phones stop working, our cars don't start because all of the computer chips have been fried. We don't get any warning at all, and then all of a sudden nuclear bombs go off. Not 1 or 2. Think over 100. The Bible says that the earth is moved at the taking of Babylon. In other words, so many nuclear bombs go off and hit America all at once that the earth is moved. You know, I think it's Isaiah 13 or 19, I forget, 21. The earth reels to and fro like a drunkard. Could it be that these nuclear weapons going off, Henry Groover saw that from the time that he saw submarines, he says they were almost on our beaches. And from the time the nuclear weapons were launched from the submarine until they detonated were less than 60 seconds, meaning we don't have any warning. This very well could be it. Now, you're going to be saying, well, Stan, is this it? Well, fortunately, I've got an answer to that. Let me finish the article, though. USS Gerald R. Ford made a port of call to Oslo, Norway last week. Spending 4 days in port, the USS Gerald Ford is the largest warship in the world and carries upwards of 90 aircraft for battle. It even has small in-flight fueling tankers. Its squadrons of fighter jets can take off, be refueled in flight, enter northwestern Russia to launch attacks, and return to the aircraft carrier. Russia would be faced with intense air battles in Ukraine, intense airstrikes into Belgorod, and other airstrikes in northwestern Russia from fighters on the USS Gerald Ford. While U.S. aircraft carriers in the Pacific sailed from Japan and perhaps launch additional attacks against far eastern Russia from the Pacific Ocean. We prophecy students know this is not the way it happens. The intel received by mail claims this massive series of strikes would be immediately overwhelm Russia's conventional forces. Here it is, this is what you want to hear. But it says that NATO concludes this would compel Russia to sue for peace. No, they're not going to sue for peace. What Hal Turner says, I say that the conclusion is flat out wrong. I agree with him. He says, I say such an overwhelming attack would compel Russia to use nuclear weapons because the survival of Russia is at stake. I say Russia has to resort to nukes. I agree. It won't be some small tactical nukes on a battlefield. I say they are far more likely to make large, I agree, strategic launches, I agree, against Western decision-making centers. No, not decision-making centers. All major cities, which is precisely what Russia warned to do if the West interfered in Russia's Ukrainian operations. Go on. The time window of June 12 to 24 is the period when the outbreak of World War III seems almost unavoidable. If this takes place, and it may not, I don't think it will, but nevertheless, we're watching. I suspect we in the West would be hit with nukes very early in the conflict. The one variable I cannot factor in is if Russia is able to thwart a potential Ukraine. I don't even have to read that. Let me skip on down. He says, I earnestly hope you and your family have emergency food, water, medicine, and generator, for electric fuel or your generator and other cars, portable communications gear, CB radio, blah, 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 blah. Okay. If the intel I received by mail is accurate, and I think it is, then you have about 2 weeks left to plan, stock up, and pray. Okay. Let me just jump to, I've already covered that. So let me jump, and I'm going to come back to that if I have time. Let me jump to what I really want to say here. We have 11 prophecies that says the dollar is going to fall. And the thing to watch for is when Saudi Arabia starts selling oil in a currency other than the dollar. That's happened. It's already in progress. So that is in progress. Then we have 14 prophecies says they're going to have a food shortage. If you've been listening to Prophecy Club for a while, we've got lots of reasons why we believe food shortage is now in progress of forming. And for that, let me back up. If you want to get gold and silver, we send you to cornerstoneassetmetals.com. You don't have to buy anything today. Call them and say, look, here's my situation. What I got, it's what I'm thinking. What do you recommend? They can give you some advice. Food shortage. Let me send you to josephkitchen.com. Yes, there's other people out there that sell emergency food supplies, but let me just be blunt. They're $9,000 or $10,000 to feed one person for a year. Frankly, most people don't have that much money. I believe that's the reason God started Joseph Kitchen, because if Joseph's Kitchen can show you how to feed one person for 1 year, not $9,000 or $10,000, but in the ballpark of around $1,000. We're not talking about half price. We're talking about 90% less than the competition. And like one guy said, I fixed some of that emergency food. Just try it out. I couldn't get my kids to eat it. They wouldn't eat it. With Joseph Kitchen fixing whole wheat bread, it's not only good for you, but it's good tasting. The kids love it. Matter of fact, we have it most every Sunday at our church. We have 17 prophecies that say a meteor, a tsunami, an earthquake is going to hit. And once again, I'll send you Joseph Kitchen. Use that promo code Prophecy Club. You get a discount. Also, we have, and I think I need to change it. I think it's actually 33 prophecies saying suitcase nukes are going to hit. I believe the suitcase nukes will happen. A lot of the stuff can happen before Russia attacks us. But let me get to that in just a second. 7 say that there's going to be a surprise Russian nuclear attack. It's not battlefield nuclear weapons hitting over in Ukraine, bombing some NATO or American forces. This is, at home, a surprise, massive attack. My guess is they'll use over 100 of their nuclear weapons. We're not talking about the size of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Those are 4 megatons, as I recall. We're talking about 250, 500 megatons. We're talking about something 200, 250 times bigger than what hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, when? Let's jump back. Okay. So, April 15th. I hope you've written these down. April 15th, 2002, Leslie had a dream. The Lord spoke audibly to her. This is a summary of the dream. That Arafat would go into the hospital and die there. That was fulfilled at 11/11/04, 3:30 a.m. He went in the hospital just like she was told. She was told that Israel will give the Palestinians a state. We haven't seen that yet. The Palestinian state would be a temporary measure to allow the Israelis time to strengthen the military. We haven't seen that yet either. Oil will be discovered in Israel, and it'll make the Jews willing to fight for their land. Then Israel and America will go against most of the rest of the Arab world. None of that. The last, 5 prophecies we haven't seen. So I'm saying Russia is not about to attack America. But it certainly seems they're setting it up. They're getting the Russian bear angry enough to attack us. Then, January 22, 2006, once again the Lord spoke to Leslie. Audible voice, guys, audible voice. And I can confirm this one because June 14th of 2008, I saw Leslie standing in front of our fireplace in this vision. I saw her holding up newspapers with these headlines on it. I can confirm this. Omer ushers in Palestinian state. We don't know that this is the order that it'll happen. Catastrophe hits America. One of America's greatest times of need. Israel refuses help to America. Israel's attacked, you should be writing these down. Israel has attacked America, sends troops. Chaos reigns as Americans protest help to Israel. Then she heard my voice quoting Dimitri Dudin, the fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists. So, Russia is not ready to attack America yet. But what is happening, we are angering the bear. We are giving the bear reason and cause and justification in the eyes of the world so that when she does attack, Russia can say, wait a minute, they attacked us first. What is wrong with this? You say, well, it's a piece of bread. You're right. It's a piece of bread I took out of this loaf. This loaf is a 1 pound loaf, and there's something missing from this bread. Even though it says it is whole wheat, there's still something missing from this and almost all of the bread you're eating. See, the story was in 1860, the smart humans decided that they were going to outstrip God and that they could figure out a way to where the flour would not spoil, because once you break the wheat berry, then it begins to spoil, and in 7 to 10 days, it's got mold. So they figured out how they could be smarter than God. We're going to take out the outside shell and then the wheat germ. We're only going to use the white powder part of the wheat. And that doesn't spoil. And they're right. You can put it in a bag. 5 years later, it's still there. But then, of course, there's something else they removed. And that is most. Now, not all, but most of the nutrition. So then they had to pass all of these laws saying you got to put niacin, you got to put vitamins, you got to do this, put all of this into the. So why not just use what God made? So the difference between this and what I made is this. That's the difference in my bread, whole wheat bread, versus what you buy in the store. The bigger slice here, this is actually cherry, cinnamon, honey, and vanilla mixed together. And I made this. So when you make your own homemade bread, you can make it flavor any way. You want jalapeno, you got it. You want to have seeds, sesame seeds, however you want to, you can make it. But the big advantage to making your own whole wheat bread is that it's probably the cheapest way to have long-term storage food, because most of your long-term storage food companies cost $9,000 to $10,000 per person per year. But at Joseph's Kitchen, they can show you how to feed your family for about $1,000 per person per year, and it's whole wheat. Okay, so what is whole wheat over the regular wheat? Well, you remember the 7 years of plenty followed by the 7 years of famine of Joseph and the Pharaoh. Well, that meant that the whole world lived off of wheat for 7 years. Now, I don't think that maybe Jesus said, man should not live by bread alone, meaning you should have other things that you should eat. However, about the closest thing out there that'll feed you not only good tasting, but also nutrition for your body is wheat. And so we recommend you go to josephskitchen.com. When you go there, you got to get 2 things. One is you have to get a machine package. That's the items that you need to actually physically make the bread. It's a wheat grinder where you put the wheat in. 30 seconds later, you have flour. You put it into a bread machine with 6 other ingredients. Push a button, 2 hours, 20 minutes later, you have a nice, hot, steaming loaf of wonderful that you made whole wheat bread. Slice that up. The slicer is even included. The beakers, everything. It's everything you need to make bread. Then you decide how much food you want to have. You want to have food for 6 people 1 year, 4 people 1 year, 2 people 1 year. You place your order, and they have it in stock. Because most of these long-term storage food places, they're out. Some of them are 2 or 3 months. Some of them are even longer behind in filling their orders. But at Joseph Kitchen, they can ship within 2 or 3 days. And they ship around the world. Go to josephskitchen.com. I'm telling you that the prophecies say there's about to be a food shortage. And if you want to listen to what God's trying to warn us about, then you'll get this long-term storage food. Terry Saka with CornerstoneAssetMetals.com. So what's going on in the world of finances? Why should they call today?
Well, China has laid out in a speech a few weeks ago exactly what they think of the United States. I haven't seen that in my 55 years. With China and Russia forming these reserve currencies, new reserve currency, we better be prepared because that dollar is going to be in deep trouble and we're going to need assets to protect us from it.
CornerstoneAssetMetals.com. Call them or go online, CornerstoneAssetMetals.com, or call them at 888-747-3309. 888-747-3309. Next is, I'll send you to EMPShield.com. If you use the promo word prophecy, you get a $50 discount. What is that? Well, it looks like this. This is the one that goes into a car, okay? And you put the red wire to the red side of the battery, you put the black wire to the black side of the battery, and the green one attaches to the body of the car. Then you peel it off right back here. Just peel that off, stick it inside of the engine compartment of your car. And the whole point is when the electricity goes off or when some kind of a suitcase nuclear device goes off, this is supposed to be able to stop that device from destroying every computer chip in your car. Because if every computer chip is destroyed in your car these days, you couldn't possibly replace them all. Throw the car away. So, EMPShield.com, promo code prophecy. Leslie Johnson had a prophecy back in 2011. She says, the Lord says there's going to be something put into the water supply in many cities of the nation. People will begin to get sick, some will die. Get a good, reliable water filter. You will not be able to trust the tap water or the bottled water. You must get something to filter the water you are going to need. That's back in 2011. So if you want it, we suggest you go to prophecyclub.com. You click right here where it says Berkey's. This is what it looks like. Currently, all Berkey's are in stock. The one I have is this guy right here. It's the Crown. It has 8 filters. I recommend you get as much as you can afford, and also recommend you get some extra filters. That's at prophecyclub.com.